Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Bill Blankschaen. Hi, Bill.
Hello, Adi. So good to be here.
It's so good to have you. We're going to talk about a great topic, which is storytelling, because I think storytelling is so important because that's how people remember you. That's how people listen. We all love stories. I love stories. So definitely a subject that is of interest for me, and I'm sure our listeners as well. But before we get into the episode, I would like to introduce you with your bio. So let's go. Let me read that. So Bill, you are the founder and chief story architect of Story Builders, a creative team of storytellers who share your passion for helping people live a story worth telling and serving them with excellence in genuine, high-trust relationships. Story Builders tells stories that make the world a better place by creating compelling books and learning experiences that turn ideas into greater impact, influence, and income.
Well, and it's been our pleasure to do that. And we love all things story related. I mean, that's what we really love to do.
That's great. And you, but your background, you were a teacher, right?
Absolutely. If let me take a couple minutes and kind of tell the story.
Tell the story, please.
I had actually helped start and was running a private school in Ohio and doing good work, getting hugs from kindergartners and helping teenagers navigate life's choices. But I felt like deep inside of me, there was a deeper calling to write and to tell stories. And I had always felt that. But I thought I was a writer. I had told people I was a writer, but I wasn't actually writing. I wasn't actually doing those things, doing good work, but not what I really loved to do and felt called to do. And I didn't want to wake up years later and regret not having shared that with the world. So I stepped away from the school, stepped into the unknown to put these gifts to work with 6 kids and no income. Not the recommended career choice path, by the way, but did that, but never worked harder in my life. I mean, I was putting book proposals together. I was writing proposals, shopping them to publishers, talking to everybody I could in the industry, learning all I could, studying the art and the science of storytelling. But it wasn't easy. There were many times that I was on the outside excited about it and eager to jump in, but on the inside, I was like, are we going to end up sleeping in a cardboard box under a freeway bridge somewhere? But I kept moving forward. And as it turned out, the first book I wrote got picked up by a publisher. And I realized I was actually really good at this. And other people began asking for help. And I began helping them. And before I knew it, we had formed Story Builders. And now 12 years later, we've been blessed to work with people like Dean Graziosi and Lewis Howes and John Maxwell and all sorts of other names. And many people you haven't heard of yet who have incredible messages to share with the world. And we've helped them get those out and tell those in a powerful way, because I really believe, what I came to believe out of my experience is that my breakthrough began when I started with my story. When I had the courage to lean into who I am and tell that story to the world, that's where my breakthrough began. I think that's true for every leader. Everyone that has a message to share, if they have the courage to start with their story and lean into that, whether for themselves or their organization or their personal brand or their whatever that might be, that's where the real magic begins to happen.
Absolutely. How do you get the stories out of people?
You ask great questions. You ask great questions once you establish a high trust relationship. right? I mean, you first of all, you have to come to it with a lot of respect for stories. You have to come to it with a lot of care and concern. And that's where we're coming from, because I believe my meaningful message is that every story matters. So, and I think each of us is a steward of our story. Like we have a responsibility to do something with it. So when we're talking to an entrepreneur or a business leader or something to capture their ideas and their story and elevate those, we're sacred might be too strong a word, but not much. I mean, I think there's something really special going on there. And so we
There is.
approach it with great respect, one, and then it comes down to developing that trust that someone will trust us with their story, whether again, organization, individual, whatever that might be. Um, and then applying that creativity and developing it and taking it to the next level. Because one thing we insist on is if someone comes to us and shares their story, we don't just write it down and give it back to them. We're seeking to elevate it, elevate their message, elevate the lessons, elevate even the intellectual property that comes from it, elevate their brand message to make it better in how they're sharing it with the world. And that's our stewardship type of thing. That's how we come alongside people to help them do that because we believe every story matters. It makes a difference.
It does. It absolutely does. So how do you choose, how do you pick the right story? I mean, we all have different
Mm.
stories.
Yeah.
So which one, not necessarily you,
Sure.
this is, we have entrepreneurs right now that are
Sure.
listening to us and they
Sure.
go, they might be thinking, well, I have different stories I can tell. I can tell the story of what happened to me when I was 10. I have the
Yep.
story
Yep. Yep.
that I can tell about how I chose this particular career. I can have a story that tells about this or about that.
Mhm.
How do I choose the right story to make the right impact?
Sure. Well, let's say it's someone with their organizational story. We call it their brand story. What is the story I'm telling with the world for my company? What is it that I'm from that point of view? Um, the important thing to remember is this: your story is about you, but your story is not for you. And when you are able to flip that dynamic, most of us think, here's my story. I'm going to share it. I'm just going to dump it out in the world. After all, it's mine. Here it is. I'll tell it and then I'll keep telling it and so forth. But you have to think, wait a minute, this isn't for me. It's for somebody else. Who is it for? And
Right.
then you can go through a process of narrowing down who is my audience? What is it they want? What are they struggling with? How am I serving them through telling this story? And once you establish that, then it's really more about editing your story or stories to fit their needs, right? It's not about you. It's not about me. I'm telling my story in service of someone else, and it's
So Bill,
helping
this is an
them.
interesting question.
Yeah,
So how do you serve others with your own story? Because you said it all started when you actually had your story. So how do
sure.
you see yourself serving others with your story?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what I do every day is helping people bring their stories to life. And that's where I felt like when I leaned into doing that, when I leaned into, all right, I'm a writer and a storyteller, when I leaned into, all right, I'm embracing that and leaning into that and doing that, that's when I began to have success, right? That's when I began to help other people multiply their story by leaning into what I felt like I was made to do, right? That was my story. And I often tell that story so people understand whatever that thing is for you, whatever you that burning message inside of you. Again, I call it your meaningful message. When you have the courage to lean into that and share that with the world, that's when the breakthrough happens, right? So, for me, my story is all about helping people tell stories that make the world a better place. And that's I see myself as a story catalyst, if you will, to help bend that growth curve and get that out and accelerate that in powerful ways. Because the truth is, if you don't tell those stories, I mean, my book, Your Story Advantage, if you don't tell those stories in a way that people can access them in some way that is beyond just you saying them, right? Then they have a limited scope. But when you put them in the form of a book, in the form of other assets and stuff that can go out in the world without you, now I like to say, a book can go places you'll never go and touch more people than you'll ever know. And that multiplies the impact of your message.
It definitely does. What if somebody is listening to us right now? You have an entrepreneur and they're thinking, well, I my story is boring. How can
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah.
get a
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
So what would you say to those people?
Yeah. Well, I would say your story is boring if it's about you, right? Who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? And then how can you tell your story that makes you unique? You have a unique story. Every person has a unique story. I think the writer of Ecclesiastes, I think in the Bible said, there's nothing new under the sun. But in fact, there is. It's you and your combination of experiences and lessons that this has never happened before, right? So it may sound like, but how you tell it, and you tell it in a way that's designed to resonate with your customer or your audience or whatever that is, whoever that is that you're trying to connect with. So you have to be intentional about it. And when you go through that process, and I outlined the whole brand story process, for example, in chapter 3, that
And
people can
that's what I
use.
wanted to hear about because,
Yeah,
I'm all about processes. That's what we do. We document processes and procedures for companies. And as you were
sure.
talking, and one of the things that we like to do the most is knowledge transfer. It's basically
Mm,
and knowledge transfer, it's not telling the story for
yes.
marketing, but it is your legacy because we
Yes, yes,
extract the
yes.
information from the
Yeah,
person. And
yeah,
I always like to tell our
yeah,
clients, it's like, this is your book. This is the
yeah,
story
yeah.
about you or how you do
Absolutely.
things and your unique abilities so others can use it.
Yes.
So what is the process of extracting your brand story, your story?
Yeah. I like to call what you're talking about there, especially your origin story, right, with an organization, because so often, as you know, as companies grow, they lose touch with that origin story. And that origin story is what really defined a lot of the values, a lot of the context of things that were happening. So when we talk about the brand story, we actually have a 7-step process we go through when we're helping organizations develop their brand story. I'll go from a very high level here on what those
Please.
steps are. It begins, first of all, with reflection and figuring out who are you, right? And actually, then we go into the origin story. And we what are the milestones? What are the challenges overcome? What's the history here? What is the story? Secondly, is identification. That is, who is your audience? Who is your customer? Who are they really? And drilling down into that, and developing out not just your audience, but your core audience, your secondary, and your general. Because if you're not hitting that core, you're missing your audience. After that, it goes to attention. Attention is, now that you know your audience, what do they want? What do they really want? What is beneath the surface of what their desires are? And then close behind that, what's keeping them from getting what they want? That's that tension portion, right? So figuring out what do they want, what's keeping them from getting what they want. And there are both tangible and intangible barriers there. Stuff they can see, feel, touch, and stuff that is going on inside, the psychology of it. The fears, the concerns, the thought process behind that. But once you do that, then it becomes the fifth step is about connection. And now here's where we're beginning to introduce your story, your organizational story. It's been about the customer so far. It's been about them so far. And now it becomes, all right, tell your story in a way that's designed to connect with them. That this is
Mm-hmm.
where it's very sharply both to show that you understand what it feels like to be in their situation and you have a solution. And then present that solution. The solution is step number 6, which is your core process. Sounds like things that you do all the time, helping them get clear on that core process. What is that process that we're going through? And then a bonus thought here is, what do I name it? What do I name that process that's my unique approach? And have I named it in a way that's designed to connect with that attention part? What do they really want? Right. So giving
What's the
some
name of
thought
your
to
unique process? I'm curious.
our storytelling structure is our main process that we use a lot of, but our story creation service, for example, is our primary book creation service, or our story coaching service, right? I want to create a book. I want to coach a book. Or our story activation. I have a story. I want to activate it. I want to bring it to life. Those kind of things. Um, and then the final step in the process is action. What do you actually want people to do? What is
That's
the language
important
that you
because
want?
without
Yeah.
action, nothing is going to happen.
And we often assume people will know, and they often don't, right? We need people to tell us, what do you want me to do next? And that'll depend on the context, depends on the situation. Are we talking about, is this a website? Is this a sales conversation? Is this what is that thing that we're having? But always thinking as their guide, as their shepherd through this process, Where am I pointing them to next? What are they doing next? Because that's a really fast spin through all 7 steps. But I lay that out all in chapter 3, and
I
then
think it's
even
brilliant.
more.
I think
So
it's just absolutely brilliant. So
no,
thank you for sharing it with us.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, Bill, if our audience would like to learn more about what you do, ask you questions,
Sure.
have you help them, or you and your team help them with their
Sure.
story, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the first thing I would do is, first of all, get a copy of the book because I really did try to capture a lot of that wisdom and put it in book form and make it accessible. They can go to yourstoryadvantage.com, order a book, and there's a ton of bonuses there with it, a lot of free stuff to go with it. But if they want to reach out and have a conversation, we welcome that. We love talking to people, hearing their stories. Just go to mystorybuilders.com/story, mystorybuilders.com/story, and just schedule time to talk. It really is that simple. We love to hear your story. And if we can help you, great. If not, we'll get out of your way and you keep doing what you're doing. But we believe in the power of story, and especially with entrepreneurs and businesses to really be a catalyst to bring that story to life in a brand defining way to
And
capture that
inspire
story
others.
and inspire
Others.
others and then make the world a better place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we share in common, and we want to make the world a better place. And stories are also fun, and it's a way that we connect. That's the way it's always been.
It is. It is. It's part of being human, I think. We're from an early age, we're like, tell me a story. Right?
Exactly.
And the reality is, your customers, the people who follow you, they're already telling themselves a story about you. It's just
That's
a
right.
question of, have you been intentional about crafting that story, or are they making up their own? Right? And that
Exactly
leaves you
right.
in a very messy place.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, Bill, it's been a great conversation, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and teaching us about stories. It's definitely was very, very enlightening. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure, Adi. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.